So today I'm just going to do a quick sort of canter through marine insurance in the context of the IAPH insurance chapter. Marine insurance, as far as ports are concerned, has been around since the Phoenicians, I suspect, so it's going to be quite a sort of a concertinaed overview in that way. Insurance is a fixed cost up to a point. It's part of the overall risk management strategy for ports. There's a minimum price for property insurance and liability. However, costs can be varied based on risk appetite. So in other words, how much a port wants to retain for itself, for example, by its deductible or its excess. Risk profile vary from port to port. For example, a large port might have an appetite for buying quite a lot of insurance to insure its extensive property values. In terms of risk profile for a small port, small ports can generate big liabilities. So even small ports with limited number of ship movements can actually have quite a high risk profile in terms of insurance. In terms of knowledge of insurance, it's helpful in terms of port operation. As a port, it's useful to know whether you're paying the right premium to cover the risks that need to be covered. So that underlying knowledge is useful for yourself as a port. It's also useful to have an understanding of insurance in terms of the people that you deal with, for example, your customers and their insurance arrangements, if they do damage to your property, or even your subcontractors. If they've done a job for you and you want to make a recovery from them, do they have sufficient insurance excuse me, to back the claim that you may have against them? So insurance touches various parts of a port's operation. Okay. I need to click on this one. Which one do we do? Okay, nice. Is that working? I don't know. Yes. Okay, this is a little video interlude. Okay, so that worked, but not for the port or for the ship. So this part deals with property insurance for landlord ports, and it's where the port in this case had bought insurance for its maximum probable loss at a value what it thought it was going to be exposed to. And it bought insurance for the grain loader. There's a grain loader running along the jetty for its insured value, for its replacement value actually. So there's $50 million plus assets that have been insured by this port. And the financiers backing the port obliged the port to buy insurance for its assets. And the port's board obliged the managers to buy insurance to protect its balance sheet for its business. The ship in this case had steering gear failure, and it struck a very handy fender there at the time, which was a tuna fish boat. And so the ship did $20 million worth of damage to the tuna fish boat. The tuna fish, when the ship was backed off it, the tuna fish boat actually sank and had to be removed as a wreck removal. And lucky for the $50 million plus asset, it didn't actually go right through the jetty, which if the tuna fish boat had not been there, it might have. But it still did damage to the jetty. It was about $600,000 worth of property claim. So as the insurer, in terms of the operation of insurance, the port's property insurance responded to this claim by paying out the port authority the $600,000, protecting the port's balance sheet in that way. And then because the culprit here was the ship, the port had a recovery claim against the ship owners. And so in terms of the operation of the port's insurance, the TT Club in this case, as the insurers, as marine expert ports insurers, obtained a letter of undertaking from the ship before it went, which was a promise to pay in terms of in effect the amount of the claim. And we made that recovery against the ship owners, and that took sort of 6 months plus for the repairs to be done and finalised and the recovery to be made. But in terms of cash flow, the benefit of insurance here to the port was they got their $600,000 without having to wait for the recovery against the ship. And then in terms of the ship's, in terms of the port's loss record, the recovery we got from the ship kept the premium down for the port in the following year in its insurance renewals. So that's the operation of property insurance as far as landlord ports are concerned, and just an example of that. Okay. This is at Southampton Container Terminal, and what's happened here is the boom has fallen off that key crane, and the boom fell off the key crane and landed on cargo there, as you can see, and it was an NYK ship in Southampton. So it's just a bit of a shot of it. And then you can see there's the boom falling in, that's just fallen into the hold of the ship. So that claim, this is liability insurance in terms of how it operates for a service port, in this case a stevedoring company. So the boom fell into the hold of the ship quite neatly there. You can see there's part of the boom in the hold. And it did cargo damage. It damaged the ship, and it generated demurrage claims from this ship that got stuck at the berth here for 10 days, and then there were 5 other vessels that couldn't use the port. Because in fact what happened, there were 10 key cranes in that terminal, and the Health and Safety Commission in the UK closed those other cranes while they were inspected, and they weren't allowed to be used for up to 3 months actually. So there were consequential losses that came out of this in terms of liability claims. Again, in terms of liability insurance, that's a liability insurance claim that the service port has in respect of liability claims being made on it. There was an occupational health and safety prosecution on the terminal, and the fines and duties cover of the liability insurance for the service port responded to that. And then there was a workers' compensation claim for the crane driver who was injured during this process of the boom falling off the crane while he was sitting in it. And he was lucky actually to survive that incident. So in terms of liability insurance, this is quite a complex claim from a legal point of view, with consequential loss claims, demurrage claims, and again, that expertise sitting within the insurer helped to keep those claims, they'd been generated, there was a liability, but keep those claims within reasonable bounds. And this is one for our New Zealand friends in the room that will recognise what this one's about. So this is liability insurance for a landlord port. And unlike with the grain terminal claim previously, where the port was sitting there minding its own business, there was no negligence, there was no systems failures within the port. This one is a liability claim on a port where the port's own systems had failed and it had generated an incident. And this is the ship here. It's the Jodie F. Millennium, and it's the port of Gisborne in New Zealand. And what happened here was the berth that the ship was at was an open sea berth and was having problems in terms of the swell coming in, and the ship was being damaged, the lines were being broken, and the pilot and the ship's captain decided to take the ship out to sea. The pilot wanted to get off the ship early because he didn't fancy going out to the sea with the ship. And so the ship slowed and the pilot got off before the end of the compulsory pilotage passage. The slowing of the ship and the distraction of that process of the captain contributed to the ship touching bottom in the channel. And when it had touched bottom, it grounded, and it was then driven onto the beach, where it sat for 6 weeks. And so the claim that was generated there, the liability claim that was generated, was a big claim. It was a $20 million claim for basically ship repair costs, pollution cleanup. There were ship's bunkers spilt onto the beach. There was a cargo damage claim. And the point here in terms of knowing your liability insurance, the liability insurer of this landlord port did pay this claim. And I know that, and it hurt a little bit. But there was a potential recovery claim against the subcontractor because the actual day-to-day operation of this port was subcontracted out to another company, which in the meantime, that company had been bought by a Danish company, and they'd ceased doing business in New Zealand. And that subcontractor that was actually running the port, that were actually negligent and actually were culpable up to a point, they had no insurance. And the people that we were insuring, the TT Club, they hadn't checked their subcontractor's insurance. And so when they went to pass on this multi-million-dollar claim to the real party, there was no money there was no one there. So in terms of operating insurance, it's knowing your own insurance is worthwhile, but also knowing what your subcontractors are doing is also very helpful. So in terms of just a little summary slide here, insurance is about risk transfer. You've got the large claims there, and you don't want a $20 million claim bending your balance sheet out of shape at any given time. I've got here, it's not a magic pudding. It doesn't renew itself automatically overnight and become whole again the next day. It's a financial instrument, and for which you pay a fee or a margin. Premiums must exceed claims, otherwise it's not sustainable in a broad sense across the whole book of business that you have as an insurer. Insurance helps with cash flow. With the grain example, they didn't have to hang around for their $600,000. They got their money straight away. Contract advice is available from specialist marine insurers. In terms of recovery actions, the wharf damage claim, again, the grain terminal is an example of that. And often when there's a large claim, the operation of the port, particularly from a liability point of view, senior staff can be put through the mill as to what they were doing in all this. They're under the microscope, and a competent specialist marine insurance can be worth its weight in gold to help manage what can be a rather nasty reputational issue for internal people, if nothing else. And in some parts of the world, where government organisations, they say, well, we don't really need to buy liability insurance because people can't claim against us. What we're finding is that with privatisations of ports, sometimes the port down the road do buy decent liability insurance, and then they'll use that as a competitive edge to attract foreign ship-owning companies who are the customers that would rather deal with a port that they can claim against and be paid in respect of the negligence that the port might have done to damage their vessels rather than not. So that's a little canter through the insurance chapter and insurance generally. So thank you.